As you can see, there's a wide variety of the different types of knobs that you can use. I use the wooden ones. I prefer the smaller ones. You can get any size you want. They get bigger. Different colors. You can choose what suits you best. The reason I choose wooden is because that percolator is going to perk right up against that screw, and the knob's going to get hot. Okay, so this is ultra fine coffee, and it's espresso, not espresso, espresso, espresso. It's a product of Mexico. I'm going to go ahead and dump it in this plastic bag because I'm going to make this percolator and go into great detail as requested by one of my viewers. So, now, I've got that in that bag. And the next step is take a can opener and remove this inner ring right here. This has to go. Okay, that's cut out. I still got a little bit of coffee in here, so I'm going to go ahead and finish putting that into the bag. I want to make sure I get it all. This is good stuff, in my opinion. And this is all in my opinion. So, you know, for those of you who are watching this video and you think you've got a better way, be sure and tell me. Let me know, you know. I'm not against suggestions. In fact, I'm for suggestions. The more I can learn from this, the better. Okay, so I've got that. The next thing I'll need is 2 Miller High Life cans for the bottoms and a regular 12-ounce can for the bottom. It can be Ultra, it can be Busch Light, it can be Coca-Cola, Sprite, 7-Up, anything that you happen to have that's available that you can take the bottom out of. Alright, so let's get started on this video. Okay, I got this 10-ounce can of Hormel chicken breast. I've opened it up. I'm going to go ahead and eat the chicken out of it. But the reason I chose this particular can is because of this lip right here. Okay? When you've got your coffee can, you're going to want a lid on it. And this fits perfectly on top of that can. That lip slides right inside there. Okay? So this gives you two options with your coffee maker. You can either leave it round without a pour spout, which I happen to have one here with a pour spout. Or you can shape a pour spout into it. Either way, you're going to use this can bottom, because this can bottom fits perfectly on here. When you reshape it, I'll show you that later on. But anyway, this is what you're going to end up with. Okay, I've got my can cleaned out. For those of you that are wondering, this is a 10-ounce size, and it was the least expensive in the store. So, you know, chicken breast is chicken breast when it's soaking in water for as long as it sits on the shelf. Who knows how long it sat there. I don't know that anybody really cares. At any rate, this is the lip I was telling you about right here. Okay? When you put it on top of this can, it fits in there perfectly. It sits in there very nicely. So if you don't want to make a pour spout, you simply cut this off above there, above the top right there, above that ring, okay? And then you can roll it over the top to make sure that it closes up. Since I put a pour spout on all of mine, I'll show you how that happens. So the next thing we want to do is we want to cut this right here. Okay? So got a pair of tin snips, and for this you're going to need a pair of needle nose pliers, a pair of Coleman scissors. No, this isn't an advertisement for Coleman, but they happen to be the best for this particular job. You'll need the bottom of a Miller High Life can or a Foster's can, and you'll need another bottom, just the bottom of another either Miller High Life or Foster's can. Okay, you'll need a Progresso soup can, and already peeled the label off of this one, and you can see there's a lip inside there. That's no big deal. That's not going to enter into this. The reason you need this Progresso soup can is because of this lip right here. Okay, when you make your basket, your coffee basket, out of a Foster's can, you need a lid for it, and that lip fits perfectly inside that Foster's can. Okay, so what you're going to do is cut this off right above this ring in order to have a lid that will hold enough water for it to drip down into the coffee to make your coffee. They aren't exactly the sharpest in the world, but they do this job rather nicely. And the thing about it is these cans are thin enough that you can actually clean them up with your Coleman scissors. And the Coleman scissors are bought in the aisle of the camping aisle at the big box store. I'm not going to advertise for that big box store just because I'm pretty sure you all know who it is. Anyway, I've got most of this cut away. Now I'm getting right to the top of that lip right there, and that's where I want to continue to cut, right at the top of that lip, because I want that lip. And the reason I want that lip is because it will slide over the can easier if it's flared out just slightly. And you can clean this up with a file. If you've got a Dremel with an abrasive wheel on it, you can clean it up with your Dremel. That's up to you. I like to file mine just to make sure there's no sharp edges. And I'll take my scissors and just clean up that last little bit right there. And just like that, we have a lid. Now, this doesn't fit properly on here because I'm going to create that pour spout. It fits there perfectly like that, which I'm not going to have. So, next step is my basket. I've got a special pencil cup just for magic markers, and I prefer to use green simply because I like it. So what you do is you determine the height that you want your basket. Okay, take your magic marker. See if I can turn that down a little bit so you can see it a little better. There we go. Okay, take your magic marker, and I just use my fingers and find a nice height that I want and put that up against there and just turn it. Your fingers are staying in one place. Unless you've got some serious shakes, it's not going to be a problem for you. See there how it came out all wrong? Anyway, you get the gist of the idea. Just hold it in one place and turn your can until your lines meet up. Okay, here's where you take your Coleman scissors. And these are really nice. The reason I like them is that little point right there. Okay, what I do is I just stick it in the can, just like that. Now, I can just work it around that can until I can get up into it with the scissors cleanly off, and I can dispose of that. Now I'll come down here to my clean line, the one that's nice and straight right there, and I'll cut that off. So I've got a nice clean basket. Okay, so next, my Progresso soup can fits right on there perfectly. So I'm going to cut right above this, right here again with my tin snips. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and cut this off of here. Set my tin snips aside, get my Coleman scissors out, and I want to cut a nice clean line right along the top, right along the very top of this lip. Okay, that's it. Okay, now that's the top of your basket. That fits right in there, nice and snug. And that's what catches the water from the percolator. Okay, the next thing you have to do is drill a series of holes in this top so that the water will drip down into the coffee down below. I've still got my chicken sitting here in a homemade cup. You're going to want to drill a series of holes in the bottom of the rim, and you're going to want to drill holes in the top of this can here. Also, you're going to want to drill one center hole in each piece, and you need this piece and this piece. So we're going to make the base for your percolator now. We've got the basket, we need the base. So I'm going to take my Coleman scissors and I'm going to go ahead and cut up one of these Miller High Life bottoms. You can see it's the exact same thing, exact same size. All I did was cut the bottom off. And this is where it pays to have a pair of leather gloves, because you've got all these little burrs from breaking the base with these snips, and you can't help because your snips just don't want to follow that rim the way you want them to follow that rim up there. Okay, as you can see, it's not perfect, but that's all right. We can clean that up. We have the technology. This is why I prefer to use the Coleman scissors as opposed to the tin snips. The tin snips leave a jagged cut, and the Coleman scissors leave a nice smooth cut. Your base. This sits on the bottom of your can with the tube extending out of it in the center. Okay, now this tube is pretty roughed up, so I'm going to cut it off a little bit higher so that I can get a nice round flare on it, and I'll still have plenty of pipe to make this work. In fact, I can go all the way up to here with my tubing cutter. Now, for those of you who are wondering what this tube is, it's copper. I don't know if you can see the copper inside there or not, but it's a faucet supply tube that I picked up at the hardware store. Okay, this particular one was 20 inches long. I've used a lot of it. These are readily available. Okay, so that's cut off. That will go right into the base, right in the center. That will have a flare on the inside and then a snap ring on the outside. While we're cutting aluminum cans, let's cut the bottom out of our Ultra can. Okay, so I've got the bottom of that can cut out. I'll just clean it up. And again, we're just cutting right up to the very bottom of it. Okay, and that's pretty much all we need. Now, you can use a file on this if you want to smooth these edges off. Okay, so we've got this cup, this lid, and they go together like that. Okay, so what I've got to do is I've got to find the center of this, this, and this. How do I do that? Well, in some of these cans, you can just look at it and tell that this is the dead center of this one right here. Okay? So with this, what I will do is I will drill my hole, then I can set it right on top of this and line those rings up and take my marker and go right down through and mark the top. Okay? With this, looks like it's 2 3/8 inches in diameter. So I want to go 1 3/16 to the center. So 1 3/16 to the center is right there, and we'll cross it from the other direction, and it puts it right there. So that right there is the center of this base. Okay, so now I've got to drill my holes. Okay, for this I want a leather glove, and the reason is because I'm going to be holding this in place while I drill it, and when this drill bit grabs, it'll spin, and I'd rather it spin on the leather than on my hand, because that could be very painful. So I'm going to start with a small drill bit and drill a pilot hole. And I would suggest doing this on a piece of wood. If you have a block of wood, you can set this on. I don't have a block of wood. Just like that. I've got that hole drilled. Let's drill this pilot hole. Okay, that pilot hole's drilled. Now, I want to drill this out to the size that I want my nut. And I bought T-nuts and stainless steel screws. Okay, the nuts are stainless steel, and so are the screws. Okay, now what's this for is this goes through this bottom here and through this lid. Okay, and then it will go into the knob. So let's go ahead and get that drilled out to the size that I want it. Now I want to come around here to the other side and just clean it up, because there's going to be some rough edges there. Just clean it up. You don't want to drill to the next size, just clean it up. Now this nut should fit right through that hole, and it does. Fits perfectly through that hole. Okay. So now I can put this on here, and I can take my marker and line this up with those lines, and take my marker and go right down through the center here. And just like that, I have that centered on that lid. So now I'll switch back to my step drill, and again I want to go up to a 1/4 inch size. Okay, and we'll clean this up a little bit too. There's always going to be burrs on the backside when you're drilling through metal. Okay, we've got that cleaned up. Now this nut will go through this cup and this lid. Okay, now this is where we need to make the handle for the top. So this came in a package of 2, and it comes with screws. I don't use those screws because I prefer to use this system that I've got here. So what I've got to do now, that won't go all the way through, but I want it to. And the reason I want it to is simply because I want to be able to fasten it tight. So the best way to do that is to drill a pilot hole all the way through from the bottom. And if you've got a drill, so I'll switch now to my step drill, and I'm going to go ahead and drill that hole out slightly larger to accommodate that bolt that's going to go through there. Okay, so I broke through, and right now it's what I need it to be. However, that nut is 1/4 inch, so I've got to drill this on out to the 1/4 inch inside here, and it needs to go in deep enough to accommodate that 1/4 inch T-nut. At that point, it's almost all the way through. That will work perfectly. So I'll take my bolt, and I need to oversize that or flare that out, and the best way to do that is with a countersink drill bit. But since I don't have a countersink drill bit, I'm going to drill it out with this larger step drill. And I want that head to fit right inside there. So I'll go one more size. Now, that head fits right inside there. Perfectly. Okay, it's just barely sticking out the bottom, but that's what you want. Okay, so now you're going to take your lid and this cup, and you're going to put this nut through there and through the lid and screw this whole thing together up nicely. It uses a Allen wrench. This is what your lid looks like. Okay, and it will fit on here after I shape this can to make it fit. Okay, so we've got this, and we've got this, and we've got this. So I can take this lid or base, and I can actually use it to mark the center of this pot. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill this out one size larger. Even though it's got to go all the way up to 3/8, I'm just going to go up one size. Okay, and I will put that on there. Then I'll take my magic marker and insert it right into this hole. Make a dot. Okay, now that's ready to be drilled. So let's go ahead and drill that with a pilot bit. I've got that through there. So let's go ahead and drill this out with our larger okay, I've got to go all the way up to 3/8, and that's two more sizes, one more size. Okay, now I've got that drilled out to 3/8. I want to come around here and clean this up just a little bit, just to make it look nice. Now, my tube should fit in there, and it does. It's tight, which is what I want. So, this is the one I'm actually using. But if I want to, I can just ream that out just a little bit more so that it accommodate that pipe. And it slides right in. Okay? So at this point, what I want to do is I want to find the ring that this fits in perfectly, because there's something always about that lines up, so you can line these up exactly. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and line that up, set that on there, and I'm going to mark inside just like that. And I'm ready for my pilot drill. And I'll drill that out. Now I'll go up to the 3/8. This is where you want the leather gloves, so you're not tearing your hands up. Okay, I've got that cleaned up. And let's make sure the tube slides through it. It does. It's snug, but I can make that work. Okay, now this one needs to be drilled out to the 3/8 size. This tube can go right up through here or down through here, whichever you prefer. And this one can be tight. It's perfectly fine for it to be tight, because what's going to happen is you're going to determine, I want to straighten that pipe just a little bit. You're going to put a flare on here with your flaring tool, which I happen to have. And I've got it set for 3/8. So I'll come in here to the stop, clamp that down, okay, I've got a flared tube. Can you see that? Yeah, it's flared. Okay, now I don't need all of this tube. I've got too much. And so what I've got to do now is determine the height that I want. And I don't want this tube to come all the way to the top, because it's going to be inside this, which will raise it that much off of the bottom anyway. And I don't want it to hit any more than I have to of this. So if I come down here like this and just find a straight mark or straight line where I can mark this, anywhere in here is fine. I can go down 1/4 of an inch below it. Okay, 3/8 of an inch below it, and that's where I want to mark that. See, it's below it. It's going to be up a little bit, but I don't want it to touch the lid. Okay, so now I'll take my tubing cutter and cut that off. Okay, that's cut off. Now let's measure that. Let's just measure it to see what it is. Okay, it looks like we're 4 7/16, and our can itself is 5 inches tall. Okay, this tube comes up through here. Okay, and this gets hammered down flat, and I'll get a hammer and I'll demonstrate that. Okay, this is where you're going to need the block of wood. You don't want to damage your tube. Set it right on the block of wood. Take your hammer and just lightly tap all the way around that flare. And what you're doing is you're flattening that flare out. You see I flattened that out. So now this goes up against that, nice and snug. Then you need a snap ring. Okay, so this snap ring is one that I picked up at the hardware store. And unless you've got a snap ring tool, you're going to need something to spread it apart to get it to go over the top of this tube. This is a tight fit. This is a metric snap ring, but the reason it's a metric is because 3/8 snap ring is too big for this 3/8 tubing. Figure that. Okay, I've got that started on there. just barely. So there we go. Get it all the way down there, as tight as you can possibly get it, because this is your base. This is the base of your percolator. Okay, you don't want that loose. All right, it'll stand in there. Your basket can go on it. Now you need your other snap ring to go on here. And for those of you who are wondering what the second snap ring is for, I'm about to show you. The basket goes over the top of that, and then the lid goes over the top of the basket and sits perfectly. That sits inside there, and now you have to drill your holes for your coffee to come through. This snap ring is to have a basket, I have a lid. And then I have this lid, which will go on top of there. So, let's measure our height and see where we're at here. 4 3/4 and almost 5 inches to the very top. So I may have to cut that tube off. Yes, I'm going to have to cut that tube off. It's too long. Okay, and I'm going to cut off just 1/4 of an inch. Not even that. Okay, that's cut off. And there it is. Okay, now the lid will fit on there, and we won't have to worry about problems with that. Okay, next step. What is the next step? I got to drill holes. Got to drill all these holes and around here. And you can use whatever size drill bit you want to in the top, because all you're doing is letting water drain back down through here. In the bottom, in this basket, I would love to use a 32nd inch drill bit, but I don't have one that small. So I've got to use a 16th, which means that I've got to have a little bit coarser grind of coffee to keep it from filtering through, or use a filtering device, paper filter or something to go in there. So I'm going to get those holes drilled. I'll be back. Okay, so I got a bunch of holes drilled in there, and they're all right at the very base of it, so that the water will all drain out. Okay, and that's pretty much all I need. Like I said, I may want to put a filter in this or use a coarse ground coffee so that the coffee doesn't drain through this. However, this, we want water to go through, and we can either use the 16th inch drill bit or we can go with an 1/8 inch drill bit. It's up to you. I prefer to use the bigger one because I can drill fewer holes and not have to spend as much time working on it. Well, that's plenty of holes for that water to go through to get into this basket. So that part is finished. Okay. Okay, when you get this part done, you have to have a way for the water to get underneath of it. Okay, so you've got a couple of options. I'm going to use a drill bit, and all I'm going to do is just drill holes right here in the edge. since I'm going to be making a spout, let's do that next. Where do I want my spout? See that line right there? That's where they seamed this metal together. And that's where I want the back of, or the handle of my coffee pot. I want the spout opposite that in the front. Okay? So how do I determine where the center is? Well, I just kind of line it up and make a mark. And right there's where I want it, that green mark right there. You can't see. Right there it is. Okay. Now, this is where you need your needle nose pliers. Okay. What you're going to do is you're going to line them up straight down. And I only go down to the first ring to make that first bend. And I just want a slight bend is all I want. Just enough to know that it's bent. Then I'll come around to the other side of it and do the same thing. Just a slight bend. Just enough to know that I've made a bend. Okay? There, you can see it. Okay? So, now, how big do we want that? Well, this particular one right here looks to be an inch. Okay? So, what we'll do is we'll come over here and we'll measure an inch. And we'll come over here and we'll measure an inch. Okay? And that will determine the other bend. And we're going to come over here like this and line up with the bottom of that crease, right up in there with the bottom of that crease, and straighten that out. And we're going to do the same thing on the opposite side and line up with the bottom of that crease and straighten that out. So what we're doing here is we're creating our pour spout. So now, where does that lid come in? Well, I'll tell you how that lid comes in. This is where you have to determine how tight you want that bend, because this lid has to fit over the top of that ring all the way around. So I'm going to go ahead and get this taken care of, and I'll be back to you. Okay, I've got my pour spout just about where I want it, so I'm going to try my lid on, and it lines up pretty close. It's not perfect by any means. I want it to fit down on there tight. So what I've got to do is I've got to cut this lip out, and so I'll mark it back here on either side, and I'll go ahead and cut that out with the tin snips so that it will fit over my pour spout without causing me great grief. Okay folks, I'm back. My SD card filled up, so I had to go download some. But anyway, this lid will fit right on there. Okay? So, when this is in here, when this basket's in here, and the water's percolating up through that pipe, it's splashing against this cup right here, and it's dripping off of that cup back into the basket. And that's what I wanted to happen, because I don't want it running around out here and dripping away from the basket. I want it directly on the basket. in here. The water will percolate up through this pipe, will splash against this and drip down back into the basket. And then this cap fits on here snugly if you do it right. Now, one thing I need to point out to you is when you're making this pot, when you're folding this bends real tight in this area and right here. So you need to kind of round that back out and tighten this up, because what you're doing is you're making a small enough circle for this with the chicken bottom to fit on there snugly and stay put. Okay, so well, the next step is going to be to make a handle. Use a coat hanger to do that. Okay, I'm using a coat hanger for the handle, and I've untwisted it, and I'm going to try to straighten it out a ways further and go ahead and make a bend right there. And then this will go on here, and what I want to do is put it in this first groove here. So now what I need to do is wrap this around both ways. Because I want it snug. I don't want it tight, I just want it snug all the way around there. And then what I will do is when I get around here to this seam right there, is I'll straighten this out and we'll be able to pull it together with the paracord wrap for the handle. Seems to be the place that I want to make the first bend. Okay, then we'll put it back on here and come back around the other way. And I stopped short of the line with that first bend, and I'll do the same thing over here. I'll stop short of the line. So right about there. And we'll bend it again. Okay, and this is going to make our handle. So what I'll do is I'll put it on here. I'll squeeze it together and make sure that this point right here lines up there. And I'll have to do some adjusting so that it comes in a little more snug. But I can do that. That's not a problem. Okay, so what I've got is a nice snug ring, and it fits right into that groove all the way around. And then I've got a gap on the far side over here that I will pull together with my paracord handle to make the handle for this. Okay, so now what I want to do is I've determined that this is where I want it to stop. So I need to come over here, and the best thing to do is to mark it where you want it to bend. And we'll come out here about 3/4 of an inch and mark it. And this is where I'm going to bend straight up to make the curve for my handle. Okay, I'm on my mark, and I just want to bend it straight to me. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing over here on the other side. Okay, this should fit on here. Pull that together, and these line up. So now I'm ready to shape my handle. And you can shape your handle any way you want to shape it. That's entirely up to you. It's your handle. I'm just going to put a little curve on the top of it, bring it down so that I can get my fingers underneath of it and be near the top of the can. My gosh, that's pretty good for a first time. Not bad at all. I'm liking it. I'm liking it a lot. So just a little more tune up here on the handle, and we'll put it back on the coffee maker. Make sure it's in the groove. Pull it tight together, and we're going down to about here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and mark that right there with my marker. And I'm going to cut it off. Now we're going to use paracord to wrap this. So I'm going to go ahead and get that started. Okay, so I've got a piece of paracord here that's about 10 feet long, and what I'm going to do is make a loop and tie a knot in that loop. And I'm kind of anal about my knots. I don't know why, but I am. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put that over this knob on my lid. And what I want to do is draw that knot up as close to that lid as I can get it. And the reason that I'm doing this is so that if I've got this on my backpack or I'm hiking somewhere and it's dangling from something, I don't have to worry about losing my lid. It'll always be tied on to the handle. Okay, I've got this paracord wrap started, and what I'm doing is I'm pulling these up snug as I go. By doing that, I've got that handle on there so tight that it's not going to come loose. It's not going to fall off. So I'm going to finish wrapping this up and show you how I finish it. Okay, I've got this wrapped all the way to the end as far as I want it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this pliers, and you can curl this any way you want to. I curl mine out rather than under, just because. So what I'm going to do is pull this paracord across there, and I'm going to curl this around. If I can. Let me get bullnose pliers are good for this, simply because you can grab it and bend it around just like that. And what I'm doing is I'm wrapping it all the way around to the point where it's coming back on top of my paracord, and I'm going to pinch it down on that paracord just like that. Okay, a DIY percolator with a snap fitting lid that won't fall off, and a wooden handle knob that will pop off. This is Greg. You're watching Greg's Country Cabin Outdoors. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. And hey, if you liked it, share it with your friends. Thanks for watching.